made it through Matthew 5. Now we're at Matthew 6. Children, it's time for y'all to head down. Go ahead and grab your Bible.
No, like really good stuff.
And flip open to Matthew chapter 6. Don't want to mislead you. And we're going to... Hey, what's up, man? Thanks, buddy. All right. I'm ready now. Are you? Matthew 6. It is really an essential thing to know how to study and interpret the Bible. And most of Matthew 5 was that. You have heard it said, you have heard it said, you have heard it said 6 times. Because the religious folk at the time were misinterpreting the Bible. They were making it easier. They were trying to make it culturally or personally relevant for them. And now what Jesus is going to do is go from a part of biblical interpretation. Now he's going to move into, okay, so what does it matter today? What does it matter in your daily lives? What does it make any difference? So you have a view on divorce and remarriage. So you have this view on anger and lust and adultery. Okay, but how does correct biblical interpretation feed into this world? And the first thing he's going to talk about in Matthew chapter 6, very interestingly, is money. He's going to talk about money. And so we're going to talk about that. And so we're going to break it down like this. We're just going to look today at the right righteousness and then the right reward. We're going to look at the right righteousness and the right reward. The text begins with, beware of practicing your righteousness. And so, right away, remember the righteousness way back in chapter 5 where it said, your righteousness must exceed the righteousness of the Pharisees or you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. Now, those were the elite religious guys at the time. Those were the super pastors of the time. And Jesus says your righteousness has to go beyond those. And one of the ways that righteousness goes beyond those is you've got to live it out. And so we look at 2 kinds of righteousness. And Jesus, I don't know what to do with this yet. And so you can play around with it, buy me a cup of coffee and we can talk about it. I mean a good cup. I don't want Maxwell House. I want good coffee. But we can still talk about this. Why is this the first thing? Isn't it really interesting to note that Jesus is going to talk about the 2 kinds of righteousness, or the right righteousness? The very first thing he's going to talk about is not prayer. It could have been. He's God. Say what he wants when he wants. It's not prayer. That's going to come next. Not even the most important, the Lord's Prayer is next. But he doesn't go there. He goes, we need to talk about your money first of all. Now, first of all, who are these guys? They're disciples. And there are some with some coin in their pocket, okay? Those tax collector folks. But these aren't Bill Gates people. And Jesus is going to say, in order for you to understand what it means to be a church and to follow me, we've got to talk about your money. Anybody uncomfortable yet? We will pass the offering plate until... No, I'm just kidding. But Jesus doesn't pass the offering plate. He doesn't say, I happen to actually have the offering plate here. We'll pass it around so that the Sermon on the Mount can be complete, because you can't have this, a good sermon without an offering. And so he doesn't do that, but he does address money. And here's how he's going to address it. How you give. Not where or what. Isn't that interesting? And so as right before we get into the 2 types of righteousness or the right righteousness, just note that Jesus is more concerned with the disciples on how they give, not where or to whom. And not that we just throw our money around and we're stupid with it, but he's not saying, so I don't give or I don't give to, I don't trust those people. I don't trust that dude. Right? Or, when you're going through Walmart and they say, would you like to round up your $10.99 to $11 to give to the Literacy Foundation? I say, absolutely not. I don't know where that's going. I don't say that because that would sound like I'm a jerk. I don't want to reveal that right away. But right, so I don't want to give, because I don't know where it's going or to who it's going. Jesus isn't going to, again, not that we're unwise with our money, but Jesus isn't going to deal with that. He's going to say, we need to talk about how you give. The righteousness that you practice. And the very first word in my text in chapter 6 is beware. In some translations, it's even translated, not in chapter 6, but later on in the Bible. It's this idea of being devoted to something. Be devoted. So you've been driving in the car and you come up to these giant limestone cliffs, or if you're in the mountains and there's the sign that says, watch for falling. My guess is none of y'all ever pulled over and maybe your kids or your wife got out and said, oh, look, I'll wave you on, it looks like nobody ever did. How many people even pay attention to that? I know, I'm just like, oh, that's cool, rocks my hands, let's go. Nobody, Jesus is saying, you've got to pull over here, you've got to get out, and you've got to look at the right righteousness. And so let's talk about the right righteousness. Beware of practicing your righteousness before others in order to be seen by them. And so there's two righteousnesses Jesus is going to talk about here. One of them self-righteousness, and the other one is the right righteousness. One of them self-given, one of them God-given. So let's just break this down. Self-righteousness, or the religious people of the time, were drawn to the fact of that they would use their money to promote their self-righteousness. And what Jesus is saying to these disciples who will walk and follow after him and begin the church, he's going to say, self-righteousness is going to be an issue in your church. I imagine it's an issue here too. Not anybody here, but some people who aren't here. Self-righteousness is going to be an issue. And self-righteousness looks like this: self-justification, self-sanctification, and self-glorification. And it's all self-given. Self-justification is this effort in trying to make yourself look good, make yourself look religious, make yourself look like you're doing what you need to be doing. And when that doesn't happen, you defend yourself. And if you need to, you'll bring somebody else into the picture to say, not as bad as them. And if it gets really bad, right? And we're speaking of giving and primarily financial means. If it gets really bad, then you'll look at somebody else like Bill Gates and you'll judge his motives. Yeah, he gives a lot, but I mean, he's got a lot of money to give anyway, and he's probably not right. And so self-justifying is this fight of making yourself look good and nailing down your value and nailing down your worth and proving yourself to God and to your church and to your community. It's self-justification, which will lead to self-sanctification, because your self-justification in self-righteousness, you got to follow me here, because if I trip over words, you got to catch it. Your self-justification is never complete. And so because your self-justification or you're trying to make yourself look good is never complete, your self-sanctification is fighting against that. And you understand, everybody understands in this room, what everybody, I would imagine, would understand in this world, that everybody needs to have some kind of change. You've not arrived, you're not as awesome as you think you are. There needs to be some kind of shift or change in your life. And that leads to this self-sanctification. And it's to appease your guilt. It's to try to prove to others that you've changed. You might call it life enhancement. Right? You know, they have packets of things you can put in your water to enhance your water. Self-righteous people just kind of look at their self-righteous, just a few drips of self-sanctification, and I'll be good to go. And if they ever start to lean to the fact that they don't need change or self-sanctification, all they have to do is ask their family, and their family will say, actually, yeah. And so we know in self-sanctification, we know that change needs to happen, but why change needs to happen often is out of the sense of competition with the person that's sitting next to you in church, or you look across the church and go, I don't want to end up like them. I know I got to change. And that's self-sanctification, and self-sanctification will lead to self-glorification. It matters what kind of righteousness you give your money with. It matters. And so Jesus is going to say, beware, watch, it's going to creep in. and self-glorification. And often this exaltation of, hey, look at me, check me out. It could be a little more subtle. And just because maybe you're more of an introvert than an extrovert doesn't mean that there's no self-righteousness and self-glorification here. Thinking of yourself more highly than you ought. You think, well, I told you, or look at me, or you find your value if somebody else would exalt you. You find your worth in that, whether that be your spouse or whoever you work with, but you're looking for self-glorification. It's immediate, right? I use my money in order that I might promote my self-righteousness. And Jesus is saying, be careful. The issue isn't whether you'll give here, or how much money, or if you'll give, or when you. He's talking about it in the form of, you're going to, if you're a follower of Christ, you're going to just consistently give. Not just on Thanksgiving and Christmas. It's going to be a practice of yours. And when you give, beware that you do not use your money to promote your own righteousness that you gave yourself. And if in that you find value and worth, it's exhausting. Self-righteousness is exhausting. George Whitefield says it's the last idol of the heart to go. Self-righteousness is exhausting because self-justification never ends. It just never ends. You're always trying to prove who you are, always trying to prove your worth. And then you use self-sanctification and you jump back and forth to try to justify yourself, defend yourself into change, back to self-justification. And maybe you can get the self-exaltation. Maybe you can get the applause you want. And it's exhausting. And Jesus is going to say, beware. Because often if you land in this righteousness, what will happen is you'll blame others for your lack of giving. You'll become frustrated and you'll give less, and you won't, because you're landing in self-righteousness. But there's another kind of righteousness that Jesus has talked about. He talked about it again all the way at the beginning of Matthew chapter 5. It is a God-given righteousness. And this is the righteousness that we are to get with. It is a justification that is God-given, so it's over and done with. We're not hopping back and forth. We're not trying to prove our value with our money. We're not trying to secure anything with our money. We're not trying to look good with our money. It's over and done with. We've stood before God the Father, and through Jesus Christ and His death, burial, and resurrection, we are justified. It's over. It's done. It's finished, and we rest. But it's a different kind of rest, because God-given sanctification is also a fight, isn't it? But it's not a fight alone. God-given sanctification is when God allows you to finally choose Him and obey Him and walk after Him. It's this sanctification where you're fighting for joy as the Holy Spirit works and changes your heart. You're not competing with your church family in God-given sanctification. You're helping your church. You're trying to move each other along, which will inevitably end in God-given glorification. And the God-given glorification is often not as immediate as we'd like. And if you're still here and not dead, you're still waiting on the ultimate glory, God-given glorification. So what this means is, as we wrestle with these two types of righteousness, and we're trying to be aware of these two types of righteousness, we need to put ourselves in positions to see need. Self-righteousness often, if not most of the time, does not care about need as much as just, okay, I hit that, I'll give that, I'll take that off my credit card every month, just to appease their self-righteousness. God-given righteousness enters into need. As we talked about in Sunday school this morning, they run after need, not away from need. And we must safeguard how we give. Which leads to not just the right righteousness, but we also have to talk about the right reward. Depending on what righteousness we walk in, we talk about reward, what we're after, our gain. followers of Jesus Christ are absolutely concerned about gain. And here's what Jesus is saying. What we are after, religious, irreligious, unbelievers, believers, you can use your money ultimately to get what you want. That's sort of scary. The religious people, the Pharisees at the time, are going to get what they want with their money. They're going to get the reward. They're going to walk in self-righteousness, but they're going to get their reward. And how do they get it? Thus, when you give to the needy, sound no trumpet. That probably, I wasn't there, I was busy during the Sermon on the Mount, so I couldn't be there. But that probably got a little chuckle from the people. That nobody would, in their right mind, bring a trumpet or a horn. That's where we get the phrase toot your own horn, right? No one would bring that to somebody who's in need and say, look, here's some $5. Do. And nobody would do that. That's ridiculous. That's an extreme hyperbole figure of speech that Jesus is saying. But when you walk in self-righteousness, that's what you're trying to do. It's that ridiculous. It's that silly. Does anybody have a trumpet here? You do. Dan, you have a real trumpet. Yeah, I knew you did. I should have known better. Everybody has a trumpet they like to blow to announce. Pretty awesome. Pretty awesome. In fact, if you need evidence that I'm awesome, look at the guy sitting next to me. What is our trumpet? And how do we use our money to blow our own trumpet? Well, I think it gets even stickier than that. Look at where they practice, where they blow their trumpets. They do it within synagogues, so let's kind of pull that a little bit. They do it in church services. And then they also do it when they go to Walmart. You didn't know Walmart was around back then, but it was. They do that wherever they go. They're ready to blow their trumpet. Spontaneously ready to just blow the trumpet. Whether they're in a worship service or they're out buying groceries, they're ready to self-righteousness. That's where it's going to lead you. It's ridiculous. But it gets stickier. It gets even more complex because then he's going to say, but when you give to the needy, don't let your left hand know what your right hand is doing. Has anybody ever tried to do it's sort of an elementary game, we've got some teachers here, where you try to do this with your left hand, make a circle like this, and then you try to go backwards with the other hand. Anybody ever try? I can't do it. Why? Because maybe it says something about my IQ, I don't know, but I can't, both hands are attached to the same brain. How am I supposed to get? And again, Jesus is using this extreme figure of speech to say, you don't even need to do what? Applaud yourself. So it's not just that you don't have a trumpet announcing how awesome you are to other people, but you don't need to applaud yourself. There's no selfies when you give. I don't think this is covert ops, camouflage, night vision giving. Like you need to slither into the church to drop your offering and get out before anybody sees you. This is about the heart, right? It doesn't mean that people don't know that you give or that you're genuine. It's about righteousness and self-righteousness. And Jesus is saying self-righteousness is so dangerous, it's best to keep it as secret as possible. You will end up applauding yourself or wanting others to applaud you. And both of those are connected. Because doesn't it get kind of dull applauding yourself all the time, trying to tell yourself in your own mind how awesome you are? You kind of want people to join in. And it's really hard to get your kids to join in because they're with you every day, so you have to go outside that. And so it's this cycle of trying to justify yourself, trying to sanctify yourself, trying to glorify yourself, using money to do that so that you can blow your trumpet and applaud yourself. And it's this never-ending cycle of taking these religious selfies. And so when you give, when you think of applauding yourself, when you give, who would you like to notice? Who would you like to notice? I immediately think of this. When I was chasing after my wife, and I've chased a long time, I had to wear her down. And one of the things I wanted her to see all the awesome qualities about me. And so, I don't know if she remembers, but if I were to give or be generous, I would want her to, I would applaud myself, like, wow, well, good job there. And then I'd want her to see me give. And that was just when I was a dumb teenager. Was I a teenager then? I don't know. Let's say, it's easier to say dumb teenager. Let's say. But, so, it's still good. Who do we want to see? I've heard people say, I've given to such and such, or I've given to this church, and all that I have done. Are you telling me that you won't let me fill in the blank? Who do we want to impress? Think about when you give. Do you ever have that, like, how's this gonna? Who's gonna be in my debt? Or how does this make me look? Or even comparing yourself. It's taking this religious selfie and then posting it right away. You want to airbrush it a little bit, right? You want to airbrush the $5 bill to look like a 50, but the right reward matters because it just reflects on the righteousness that you are after. We have to be prayerful about this, don't we? And we have to be purposeful about our money. We can't just give it away. We've got to be this isn't about just throwing money from the church steeple. This is about being purposeful with our money, making sure, being prayerful about our giving. What is the reward? What is the right reward he's talking about here? Let's clear something up right away. Okay? Joel Osteen's wrong, and so are his buddies. Okay? This right reward is not the car or the life you've dreamed of or the house on the Riviera area. Because probably not financially, but has anybody here ever outgiven the Apostle Paul? Just show of hands. One, no, okay. Let's go. What about Peter? Let's go to some. Right? Nobody has. How did your life end? With everything, with a good bank account, and no. So right away, we just throw that off the table. So there are 4 things that I think this reward can mean. The first one, and it could be all of them. Could be all of them. You know God. Could be all of them. This is gain we're after. Number 1, it could just be simply, and I think it fits in the context, we're no longer looking for the applause of man or self, but the applause of our Father. I think that's the reward. Like, wow, I am now capable. I can now use my money to please God. I can do that. And he's not saying, oh, no, that was only $6, give 7. But I can use my money, whatever it is, to please God. I think that could absolutely be rewarded, and in the process glorify Him. You want to talk about salt and light? Use your money to be salt and light. It can be the growth of your God-given righteousness, the sanctification we talked about. That the hungering and thirsting at the beginning of chapter 5. Hungering and thirsting for righteousness. You see the work of God in your life. Is that a reward? I think it could be the next one. It could just be this. You see that God has used you to meet needs. Someone like you. Someone who is prone to self-righteousness. You can see how God uses you. And then the final one is when you hear God say, well done, good and faithful servant. It could be all of these rewards are what we have to. Now you see, when we look at the right reward, it's not that the wrong reward is bad. It's that it's not enough for the followers of Jesus Christ. It's just not enough. We don't talk about trumpets and applauding yourself. I'm after something better and deeper. I'm after something so wonderful. And so we've got to talk about plans. How do you give? Do your spouse, do you talk about giving? Do you teach your kids about giving? Can you be spontaneous with your giving? So if I came up here and said, hey, this came to my attention, we have a need, and this is what we need, or would you be equipped and say, we got it. What about a blueprint? Do you have kind of a blueprint, your budget? We talked about this morning in Sunday school about we have a blueprint for retirement. We have a blueprint on, okay, we can spend this much or more. Why would we not have a blueprint on giving? Could you give more? Let me give you I never forgot this. When we were first out of church, when I was in school in South Carolina, I remember that there was a need in the youth area. And I got this really wonderful idea. I said, I know what we need to do. We're on the corner of a busy intersection, and we could have a car wash. We would use holy water, but we would have a car wash. And people could come and we would wash their car, and they would give a donation. And I never will forget one of the leaders, one of the deacons, I believe, at the time said, if we have a need, if our youth have a need, why would we expect the world? Why would we expect people? We don't even know, why would we not, as a church, rise up and go, we got it, we got it? That's not always stuck with me. And I'm not against bake sales. You're really good at baking, but I think that's. We have to look at, like, if there's a need, let's do it. Let's meet it. Let's find a way to meet it. And we need to know how to give spontaneously, and we need to have a blueprint. Let me give you this example, because we've been blessed with a lot of kids. We talked about that last week, that they could overthrow this church. Just don't tell them. When you didn't hear that. And they could overthrow this church if they just knew the power they held. And again, if you're a teacher, you already know this. And So we want our kids to learn the value of a buck, like a hard-earned dollar, right? Work hard, get a savings account, and often, and I've been there, and I've heard it from y'all. If they could just save up enough, and then that day will come. What day are we talking about? The first car, right? And it can't just be any first car. Maybe it's better to teach our kids the value of a hard-earned dollar. The value of working hard, that they might give that away and drive a 1977 blue, brown Bonneville instead. Maybe that would be better. Maybe that would be more important for our kids. And you can even see how self-righteousness would work its way out in our kids. I earned that. I did that. I got that car. I worked hard for it. Good job. And then as you pull into the parking lot at the first day of school and your buddies are all out, you can pull out your trumpet and blow it as you pull into your parking spot. And all your friends will go, wow, that's awesome, that's your car. I'm telling you, if you drive a 1977 Bonneville on the first day of school, then blow your trumpet all you want, nobody's going to applaud. They're going to get out of the way because they're fearful that you're going to run over them. But maybe that's one of those just applicable things to look and say, what are we teaching our kids about money? This is really heavy stuff. Because the line between, often, at least for me, the line for self-righteousness and God-given righteousness is blurry. Am I giving rightly if I'm going after the right reward? Am I really? Am I sure? And then there's all these needs to be met. And you cannot read the Bible for very long to read things from the Old Testament to the New Testament about if you see a need, you meet it, period. If you're a part of the people of God, you meet the need. You look after widows. You look after orphans. You give and you give and you give again. And C.S. Lewis picks up and says, look, if you're not giving till it hurts, you're not really giving. If you're not doing without things because you're so generous, you're not really generous. C.S. Lewis, not me, be mad at him. But we're supposed to give rightly, to see the need. And then when life gets hard, and circumstances come, and there's kids, and there's needs that you have, and sickness, and COVID-19, we don't back away. The people of God don't back away. Go, look, let me try to get some things. We go forward with our money. We go forward with our need. But it's so hard to. I don't know if you feel that with me. We're like, I have no idea if I'm giving right. Am I giving with no trumpets, no applause? How in the world do we do this? How are we involved? If the last idol to be plucked from my heart is self-righteousness, how am I not giving out of a sense of self-righteousness? And I think that's Jesus is headed back. I wasn't there, but maybe Matthew nudged some of them and said, we have to have the gospel if we're going to give rightly. And said that or not, but if he did, he was right. That what we need is the gospel in order to motivate giving, but also to make sure that we're giving rightly. And there is one who dwelled in perfect righteousness. He sees self-righteous, and he sees righteousness. He sees God-given. He knows righteousness. His throne is righteousness. He acts in righteousness. He knows no other way other than to act in righteousness. And he steps out of heaven, fully God, now becomes fully man, and he begins to live in righteousness. And he dwells and he acts. The Word made flesh and dwells among us, and the word that he speaks is righteousness. Over and over, and he came for a people who had the wrong righteousness. And he came for the right reward. And he didn't come for the applause of men, although he deserved it. He didn't come for the applause of himself, although he deserved it. He came after the will of his Father, and write this down, and his reward was you. Pretty shoddy reward, huh? Oh, but wait till he gets done with you. Oh, wait till he gets done with you. Jesus Christ, when he dies on the cross, the one in perfect righteousness, sets aside that perfect righteousness and takes on self-righteousness. He takes on your sin, your self-righteousness, my sin, my self-righteousness, and on the cross when he dies, the Father judges him instead of us. That we would have his righteousness. That when we bow and confess with our mouth and believe in our heart that he is Lord, then he gives us his righteousness. To do what with? To do what with? To give. To give. To be generous. He didn't come to say, follow me, I'm the example. No. We can't even follow him. We're in the wrong righteousness. We need the right righteousness. And the only way to get the right righteousness is through Jesus Christ. Are you sure you have it? Are you generous? Let's lay down our trumpets. Let's stop applauding ourselves and walk in real and right righteousness, that we would be incredibly generous. Because we serve a God who gives and gives and gives and gives, and ultimately he has given us Christ, who is now our treasure and will always be our treasure. Let's pray. Lord, thanks for allowing us to give. The freedom to give. We're not entwined with money. Our lives aren't dictated on the next toy. That we are free to give and not try to use it to prove ourselves or promote ourselves. I pray that you would help us to give. Help us to see need. Help us, Lord, because we are just like the disciples were over and over again. We are disciples that are just prone to self-righteousness. And we're comfortable there. And I pray that everyone in this room would know the right righteousness that comes through Jesus Christ's death and resurrection. Thank you for paying the cost. We love you.